Yo, I would like to present to you a completed project of mine. It is a homebrew tabletop RPG system. So it's called the Tricolor D6 System. And originally, how this started is I was interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons, but I did not have any books. I didn't have like a D20 set of dice. What I had was an old copy of Risk that I bought from the library for like $1. And inside it contained a couple of different colors of D6 dice. Well, I also had access to like a dollar store locally that was selling just about 40 millimeter size miniature figurines from like all kind of fiction, like Shrek was in there, Disney type stuff, DC Comics miniatures, little toys that only cost $1. So I started thinking, how in the world could I combine these cheap miniature figurines with a couple of dice, right? And initially devised this system on index cards with these dice and a couple of rocks and things like that. But what you have is 3 D6s, 3 different colors. It's totally different than 2D6 or 3D6 of the same color. That's just a completely different thing. Your white die is for movement. And it's anything movement, whether it's steps or special moves, anything like that. Movement isn't just can I move, it's how well you move. When you cross terrain, dodge, reposition, chase, or escape, what you do is you roll each round and you spend those points accordingly. The red die is for both combat and actions. So it's going to cover attacks, physical stuff like drawing swords or looting, forceful interactions, direct attempts to change the situation. It's basically when you cross a line and commit. Low rolls can still succeed, but with backlash, partial effects, or consequences. Higher rolls represents decisive action, dominance, or clarity of execution. And the black die is for specials / the unknown. This is the most interesting die. It represents special abilities, magic or technology, luck, fate or corruption, things of that nature. Tricolor D6, Y3 dice, it separates axes of reality. You might move really well, attack poorly, trigger something strange, so on and so forth. And one of the big mechanics is a SAC core. This was taken from my experience with multi-user dungeons, where SAC core was a big way for users to kind of clean the sprites out of RAM, so that the software did not have to do that automatically. It also is tied back into like Necro or battle mage builds. So when you sack a core, you gain +1 to any single die on the next round, no matter what your character is. Okay. And it kind of forces a moral or tonal decision. Are you burning resources, exploiting the dead, feeding something unseen? It turns victory into a choice, not just a result. There was some design philosophy, blah, blah, blah. ChatGPT is saying it works especially well for Doom-like action, dark fantasy, techno-mythic settings, narrative-forward dungeon crawls, experimental RPGs. It's pretty fast, tactile, so on and so forth. I would almost say it's a little bit tactical. It's a little bit arcade. So we're gonna try to do like a total thing here, and then how do character stats work? Total presentation. In the Tricolor D6 system, character stats are not big piles of numbers. They are modifiers on reality. So like an RPG is. The 3 core stats are mobility for speed, balance, positioning. How well does your body obey you? Force is for strength, precision, aggression, and follow through. Resonance and magic, tech, luck, weirdness, tolerance. Stat values. So you got ranges like 0 is untrained, 1 is competent, 2 exceptional, 3 legendary. And stats apply only when relevant, running across, collapse, scaffolding, so on and so forth. You do have health, armor, and survival. Stats do not inflate HP. Instead, health is low and meaningful. Armor instead absorbs damage and then breaks. So your armor's only going to last so long. The characters don't level often. I don't know. I think ChatGPT is kind of making some decisions for me. So let's talk about how does combat work. Combat in the Tricolor D6 system is built to feel fast, violent, and cinematic, not procedural. It's less about turn locking, more about momentum, position, and consequence. So the structure of a combat round is you're going to roll 3 dice. You get to move. You're going to have a combat action and a special every single round. Usually you move. Usually you're going to act and then finish it off. Damage is really simple. Most weapons deal 1 to 3 damage. Big weapons or crits deal more. It's flat. Your armor absorbs first. So it is going to absorb the damage and so on and so forth. If you kill a creature and you sack it, on the next round you get +1 to any roll. This says there's no strict initiative, but there's actually initiative. There is initiative. Got it. There is initiative. Who goes first is usually white plus mobility, things of that nature. Crazy. There are two campaigns. There was also some world building involved in this, where I created like an artificial planet that is basically engineered from the core to the floating kind of ruins and palaces up in the sky. There are two campaigns. One called The Firmament, kind of primordial version of Navarra that takes place mostly around the core layers. There is a second campaign called High Fantasia that takes place mostly within the cloud layer of Navarra. So if you want to get involved more with technology, engineering kind of stuff, you run the Firmament. There's more primordial, gravitational, sacrificial. High Fantasia is civilized, mythic, social, airborne. That is not a gender thing. And it's just two different campaigns. The Firmament is heavy, ancient, pre-civilization, near cosmic. There's still people, there's still jobs, factions, things like that. But different kind of character builds can happen. High Fantasia happens up where there's like floating sky ruins and palaces and things like that. And it's more romantic, more adventurous, more social. Now, in High Fantasia, is more about movement. Is a little more difficult because everything's floating around. You can't on these floating sky islands, so airships, mounts like griffins, floating cities, vertical combat may happen. And combat fields, maybe there's more enemies, faster fights, things like that. Characters in High Fantasia a lot of times associated with royalty, like heroes, knights, explorers, politicians. Things of that nature. So the other one was talk about factions. There are things like skill checks, difficulty classes. Talk about skill checks and DC. So if you want to, like, if you don't necessarily want to follow the rules, so follow the options the DM is saying, you want to make your own decisions, you're going to have a lot of like difficulty checks, skill checks. Usually white is for physical positioning, red, forceful action, black, magic. That is modified by skills. You might have skills like climbing, lock picking, firearms, things like that. In High Fantasia, the black die is really, really associated with black powder. So I have a lot of airships, sky pirates, things like that. Whereas in the Firmament, the black die is a lot of times associated with tech, twist of fate, magic, things like that. So a big one is a talk about joining a faction or guild that involves moral, philosophical, and doctrinal checks. So this is something I came up with where instead of necessarily paying gold or paying a fee or tax to maintain faction or guild membership, I decided that in order for a character to maintain membership within a group, that these groups tend to define the morals, the philosophy, and the doctrine that a character must kind of maintain in order to stay with the group. So membership is earned by passing three kinds of checks: moral checks, what you do when harm is unavoidable; philosophical checks, how you explain reality to yourself; doctrine, whether you will obey a system that contradicts you. Doctrine is like immutable law, cannot be changed. And the moral check, I don't know, red. Philosophical checks, can you live with the meaning of your actions? So some of those interpretations might be 1 to 2 on a red means you act but with cruelty, cowardice, or excess. 3, 4, you act as expected. 5, 6, you act decisively, embody the faction ethic. So you get marked. You get marked for failure, which may lead you to be excommunicated from the faction. It may turn your faction into enemies, depending on how you really want to go with it. So I'm going to do some examples real quickly. Let's do a tutorial with a random character in the Firmament campaign located in the engineering layer of Navarra. We'll do like 1 combat situation, 1 faction situation, 1 skill check situation real quickly, and let's see. We'll do a little guided tutorial real quickly. There are a couple of other mechanics. I just forgot one, and it's not that big of a deal, but it goes back to Sat Core. That whenever you kill an enemy, it just lays there. Something's got to be done about it. So we're in the Firmament campaign. The planet's built out of layers. We're in the engineering layer, which is adjacent to the core of the planet. It's industrial. It's very sacrificial. Got a random character named Kale Virex, whose role is structural engineer, salvage adept. Got some +1 to mobility, +2 to resonance. Got skills and structural analysis, etheric machinery, which is a type of magic involving gravity and lightning, things like that. Scene setup. He's inspecting the gravitational load stabilizer, a massive ring of rotating obsidian alloy that keeps the layer from collapsing inward. Situation 1 was a skill check for black. The stabilizer shifts pitch. Aether pressure spikes kill. Suspect core resonance bleed. If he's wrong, the machine may rupture. He wants to diagnose problem before it cascades. Mechanics. This is analysis of unstable core adjacent machinery. Tricolor black. Skill applies in etheric machinery, so you get resonance +2. And the GM sets the difficulty class to 4. The roll on it is a 2, but you get +2 to resonance is 4. The difficulty check was a success. But because it's black, success is never free. I don't know about that. So I think ChatGPT is adding its little bits to my programming. Kale identifies the fault. The stabilizer is compensating for a missing countermass deeper in the layer. However, he experiences a resonant echo. His next black roll this scene will suffer backlash on a 1 to 2 instead of just 1. Situation 2 combat. There's a breach before Kale can report the issue. The floor plating tears open. The core thrall climbs out. A half-fused labor corpse animated by gravitational shear. It lurches toward the stabilizer. If it damages the ring, the layer destabilizes. Initiative is D6 plus mobility. I get a 5. The thrall rolls 2. So Kale acts first. On combat round, Kale intends to reposition to higher footing. Use a cutting torch to sever the thrall's anchor limbs. So he's going to always roll white, red, and black. Well, he's always going to roll white and red. I'm not sure. Why is black? No special invoked. Who knows? So he rolls a 5 and a 3. So he's going to position. Got a higher roll. He's going to get the advantage. The red is a solid hit. The torch deals 2 damage. Thrall has 1 armor destroyed. 2 health reduced to 1. Thrall's turn. He gets some poor footing on a 2 and a 4 as a forceful strike. We get a 4 and a 5. The sack corpse is optional. So you got finished off. Does not sack core. In the firmament, this is noted, not judged but remembered. Got a faction trial, engineering conclave. The engineering conclave arrives, stewards of structural doctrine in the core layers. They witness his restraint, his diagnostic insight, his refusal to sacrifice. They offer conditional membership of first trials. Trial 1, there's a moral check. If sacrificing the thrall would have stabilized the layer instantly, should you have done it? There's a difficulty class of 3. And he rolled a 2. So you, as a player, do not answer these questions. Your character rolls to see if they pass these ethics, philosophy, and doctrinal checks. So he gets a failure on that too. Kale admits, I chose preservation over certainty. And it marks him hesitant under doctrine. Philosophical check for black. Kale must explain how structure and sacrifice relate. Black roll, resonance applied, difficulty class 4. You got a 5, so that's a success. The doctrinal check, he must follow a non-optimal repair protocol exactly with a successful roll. He obeys structure even when he disagrees. Faction result, he's status as a conditional engineer. So he now has some buffs like access to engineering layer facilities. And he's now under increased scrutiny. If Kale sacrifices improperly in the future, backlash will be harsher. So we just had a tutorial skill check, a combat, and a faction trial. Do we want to do the same tutorial for High Fantasia campaign? Same tutorial for High Fantasia campaign. And it might be rules change a little bit according to ChatGPT. It'll feel a little bit lighter, faster, more myth shaped. Myth is huge in High Fantasia. So we're up in the clouds. We're like floating ruins, palaces in the sky. So we're in the cloud layer. Regions, Skybridge District, Upper Drift. It's very mythic. It's very social. Kind of high intelligence kind of thing. I think elves, things like that. So a random character named Elowen Eris, the Sky Core. Like I said, this has nothing to do with gender. Nothing. It's just you're a campaign based higher up on the planet versus low down at the core. Apparently has a mount, or can grab a mount, which is super important for mobility between these floating islands. Mobility 2, force 1, and no resonance. They have aerial navigation, light blades, court etiquette, wind weave jacket. Elowen is crossing a sky bridge connecting two floating districts. Below is open cloud, not death but loss. There's a crowd ahead. So we're going to do a skill check. A section of the sky bridge is subtly out of phase, drifting a fraction of a second out of sync with reality. Locals hesitate. No alarms yet. Excuse me. Elowen wants to cross before panic sets in. This is movement, timing, and balance. The thigh color is white. Skill applies, aerial, navigation. So difficulty is 3. I get a 2, 4, and it's a clean success. So she crosses. Combat. Situation 2 combat, Sky Raider ambush. As she reaches the far side, Sky Raiders drop from above. Glider rigs, hook blades, theatrical confidence. They want the satchel. So initiative happens. D6 plus mobility is a 7 versus a 3, so Elowen acts first. This is auto played. So you would be making these decisions. You vault onto a railing, strike fast, keep moving. There's definitely a white and red. So there's a 6, a 2, Dominant position for 6. 2 is a weak hit. Damage, light blades deal 1 damage. Okay, now there's faction guild initiation. There's a couple of things here I want to say that I have been working on this for about 2 years. ChatGPT does not always remember the total rule set. So I'm going to have to program in that remember guard is based off of stats where some attacks may not hit. So I may have screwed up this entire video. You can add in a guard, which is a little bit like armor class from Dungeons and Dragons. Guard represents a character's ability to avoid being hit at all. If an attack fails to beat guard, there's no damage, there's no armor loss. What guard is and is not guard is reflex, awareness, positioning, training. Does not have anything to do with hit points, damage reduction, armor, anything like that. The guard is derived from stats, not rolls, so it's 3 plus mobility. How attacks interact with guard. An attacker rolls red, you apply that and compare it to the guard. So if below guard is a miss, equal is a glance, where it only hits the armor, and then above guard is a clean hit, armor, health. So kind of a crazy thing. Like I said, the real problem with this is that ChatGPT does not always remember the rules. Does not always remember the rules. So like, for instance, it just left out guard. Now, another thing is show how a character selects their movements, attacks, and specials from a list based off the die point system. And this is where it really becomes a game instead of a loose narrative system. The die face is really the action points, and I think it kind of comes from Steve Jackson games. Each die you roll does 2 things. It determines success quality, and it determines how much you can do. You don't declare a single action, you spin the die. Turn sequence player, you roll white, red, black. Maybe sometimes you're rolling black, sometimes not. White, movement list. So you cost of 1, you shift 1 zone, step, adjust footing. 2, you could dash, vault, slide, climb. 3, take cover, disengage, mount, descend, things like that. Red, attack, action, list. So I have no idea How do better movements, I think it's affect combat. How do better movements affect combat? In Tricolor D6, better movements don't just help you get around, they reshape the entire combat math before attacks even happen. Red is what you do, white is whether it even works. So movement modifies guard before attack. High quality movement directly increases your chance not to be hit at all. So if you were to roll a 1 or 2, you might have -1 temporary to guard. White 3 to 4, no change. White 5 to 6, maybe get +1. Movement controls who can attack whom. Melee requires adjacency. Backstab requires flank. Heavy attacks require stable footing. Multi-target attacks require line or grouping. Movement changes attack costs. So attacking from elevation or flank reduce red cost by 1. And movement creates forced reactions. High tier white movements can force enemy responses. So a flank, disengage. I don't know, and the main criticism here is I have no idea who in the world could calculate all this, except to maybe program it in. If you get the programming right. But interestingly, it does run on Chat GPT if you spend time kind of setting it up. So we had about 40 minutes set up. And another thing is that if you were to open up a new chat, it's probably not going to continue where you left off. But I do think that it turned out to be pretty fun. So let's roll a character. Alright. Here's a fully rolled character. Character roll, campaign, and context. So we're in High Fantasia campaign. In the cloud layer, kind of mobile. Roll core stats. So you get mobility +2, force +1, resonance 0, guard calculated at 5. So they're really hard to hit. You can start out with 4 health and 1 armor point. So that thing can be destroyed. The armor can be destroyed. Skills, roll 3. You get aerial navigation, light blades, and streetwise. Starting gear is going to be a sky blade, wind weave cloak, grapple line, corail satchel, and skills. What this character is good at: high white rolls, high guard, a red 1 to 3. They fear enclosed spaces, black heavy encounter. So we're gonna also choose black specials, black die specials from a list. So we have it's constrained by stats, campaign, tone, and risk. The resonance is 0. Got 2 black slots. 1 and 2 is safe. 3 is risky. 4 is not available at start. So we have a special 1 as a slipstream step. Costs 2 black. Instantly reposition to any visible spot within short range. things like that. Because resonance equals 0, Terran cannot start with area black effects, summons, reality, distortion. Now, let's boost this character up to level 10 and see what happens. Perfect. Level 10 is where a Tricolor D6 character stop being good at things and start bending encounters by presence alone. Level 10 evolution, High Fantasia campaign. The archetype goes from Sky Runner to Mythic Courier. Baseline level 1 was +2 to mobility, things like that. Level up philosophy by level 10. Stats increase sparingly. Power comes from options, not numbers. Dice don't matter. Guard stays bounded. Stat improvements. Got a +3 to mobility, +1 to resonance. So intentionally, Terran becomes legendary at movement, gains controlled access to the weird, does not become a brute. Health goes up to 6, armor 2, skills expanded, not stacked, 3 skills, griffin handling, high speed combat, guild, protocol. Black specials like Slipstream Step, Skymark, Aerial Phase. Kind of cool. So I'm going to ask simulate a game silently with this character from level 1 until deceased. How long do they survive? Understood. ChatGPT is going to simulate quietly, no narration, no dialogue, just events, roles, and outcomes compressed. There were 6 encounters at 1 and 2, 3 combats, 55% of the time missed guard, no near-death events. Level 3, survival continues. 4 to 5, reputation improves. 6, health permanent, -1 scar. 7, armor replaced. 8, 9, level 10 reached. 3rd, firmament exposure by mistake. The final event was in the lower engineering spillway of the firmament. Accidentally went from High Fantasia realm onto the engineering core. No valid escapes or cause of death, environmental collapse, plus resonant shear. Total sessions were around 30. Total combats engaged 19. Many deaths avoided by guard. No sacks. Cool. So they were really good at movement until it got into a place where movement didn't matter as much. Let's simulate a tank until deceased. Understood. Same rule, same pressure. Tank archetype. Goes level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ends up dying down there at level 9. And survive 16 to 19 sessions, 27 combats, Survival mechanism, armor plus sacrifice, low. It had low guard. Cool. So like I said, I have no idea if you could actually play this. That's just something I worked on for a while, kind of my homebrew system. So if you watch this, thank you. Peace out.